Ronald Reagan, Speaker. Ronald Reagan began his career as a Hollywood actor in 1937. At the time, he was a Democrat and even supported some liberal causes, but his aversion to communism, he was involved in attempts to root out communism in the film industry, caused him to shift further to the right ideologically. His first leadership role was with the president of Screen Actors Guild. He would serve 7 terms in his office between 1947 and 1959. In 1954, Reagan became a spokesperson for General Electric. He hosted a General Electric theater, a television show which featured literary adaptations with characters portrayed by leading stars of an era. During this time, Reagan traveled around the country making thousands of speeches to GE Works. When our tour, he might give up to 14 days. In a single day, Reagan had found the perfect training ground in oratory. It was during these tours that he learned how to tell stories, use humor, and establish common ground with his audience. He would use these techniques on the campaign trail, in the California governor's mansion, and finally in the White House. Reagan's time at GE also solidified his new identity as conservative and a Republican. In conversation with the GE executives, he wished to understand the challenges businesses face, particularly in the dealings with labor and government. By the end of the time at GE, he was accomplished speaker with consistent message that reduced regulation was the best interest of both corporations and the American people. Reagan's political career began when California elected him governor in 1967. He ran on promises to shrink government, dismantle the welfare state, and anti-war and anti-government protest. Reagan was re-elected in 1970 and served a second term after leaving office in 1974. He continued to write and give speeches on current events. General Ford narrowly defeated Reagan in the race for presidential nomination in 1976. This loss did not deter him. 3 years later, Reagan announced that he would run again. This time, his experience, charisma, and gift for language earned Reagan his party nomination and a chance at presidency. In his speech at the 1980s Republican National Convention in Detroit, Reagan did not shy away from addressing the country's challenges. In the 1970s, Americans were contending with high gas prices, stagflation, high inflation plus high unemployment rates, and slow economic growth, anxiety from heightening Cold War tensions, and trouble in the Middle East. The Iranian Revolution had occurred a year before, with the new regime showing increasingly hostile towards the West. At the time of the election, 52 Americans were being held hostage in Tehran. The world watched as Iranians held the hostages for 4 days. Politicians cast blame particularly at the President Carter and Democrats. Reagan took the opportunity to contrast himself with Carter. He did his best to paint the president as overly pessimistic. In July of 1979, Carter made what came to known as Mali's speech of national television. He never used the word malice, but did not acknowledge America's crisis of confidence. Carter went on to declare that sacrifices must be made to the set country on the right. Of course, initially, the public responded positively. Conservative pundits, however, accused him of blaming Americans for causing their own problems. The president's ratings began to slide. Challenges at home plus setbacks in foreign relations, including the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan, took their toll. Ultimately, it was Carter who had lost America's confidence. In his nomination speech, Reagan crafted conscious of counterpoint to Carter's most sermon-like structure and deliberately infusing his own with his sunny showman style. He projected bundles of confidence in America and American people. The newly minted nominee details his platform, including his plans for economic growth and restoration in the military's power. True to his conservative beliefs, he was promised to cut spending and lower taxes. These policies, he assured his listeners, would allow him to deliver on campaign promise to make America great again. The man who called the great communicator knew his audience, not just one at the convention hall, but those sitting at home. Reagan's ability to connect with groups, individuals, in person and television earned their trust. His confidence convinced them to believe in a brighter future. Reagan proclaimed his faith in America, and Americans put their faith in him. On January 20, 1981, Ronald Reagan was sworn in as the 40th President of the United States. That was Ronald Reagan's speech, introduction, or